It was an ordinary late afternoon at a busy suburban gas station, the kind where the scent of gasoline mingled with the faint aroma of fast food from the nearby convenience store. Cars came and went in a steady rhythm, people were hurrying to get home, and the atmosphere seemed harmless, mundane even. The sky was tinged with the soft oranges and purples of the setting sun, and the distant hum of traffic on the nearby highway provided a constant backdrop. In the midst of this ordinary scene, a single mother pulled her old sedan into a pump, unaware that her ordinary day was about to take a terrifying turn. She stepped out of the car, her keys jingling in one hand, a grocery bag swinging lightly from the other. She had just come from picking up her children from school and was making a quick stop to refuel before heading home. The weight of her responsibilities pressed heavily on her shoulders. She thought about the bills piling up at home, the school projects her children needed help with, and the dinner she still had to prepare. For a brief moment, she let her mind wander to more pleasant thoughts, imagining her kids' laughter filling the living room, oblivious to the troubles of the world. That sense of normalcy was abruptly shattered when a group of men, 3 in total, approached her with an unmistakable air of menace. They weren't just ordinary bystanders or fellow customers. They exuded a sense of arrogance and entitlement that made the hair on the back of her neck stand on end. Their eyes lingered on her longer than polite strangers should, their expressions twisted into smirks that spoke of trouble yet to come. As she tried to ignore them and focus on her task, she noticed that they were speaking to each other in low, hurried tones, occasionally glancing in her direction. The first words reached her ears, sharp and crude, cutting through the ambient noises of the gas station. She tried to continue pumping gas, hoping that their interest in her was fleeting, but it was clear that she had been singled out. One of the men stepped closer, blocking her path slightly, his movements calculated to intimidate. He made a series of crude remarks, targeting her appearance and her status as a single mother, and each word hit her like a physical blow. She felt her heart pound in her chest, a mixture of fear and anger rising within her, but she knew that showing overt panic could escalate the situation. The situation quickly escalated as the other 2 men circled around, creating an unspoken barrier, hemming her in. Their laughter was low and menacing, each joke a subtle threat. Shoppers and employees nearby glanced over but hesitated, some pretending to be busy with their own tasks, others whispering nervously to each other. There was a collective unease in the air, an understanding that something bad was about to happen. The single mother's mind raced as she tried to think of ways to defuse the situation, of ways to make these men leave without provoking them further. But every attempt to step back or ignore them was met with louder jeers, sharper insults, and more aggressive posturing. She could feel her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the nozzle, the metal cool against her fingers. The men's confidence seemed to grow with every second, feeding off her visible discomfort. They mocked her, questioned her choices, and made threats that were half-heartedly veiled as jokes. Each passing moment felt like an eternity. She thought about running to her car, about driving away as fast as she could, but the men's positioning made that impossible. Panic started to seep in, a raw, almost paralyzing fear. She realized that she was utterly alone, surrounded, and there was no one immediately coming to her aid. Then, just as the tension seemed unbearable, the distant rumble of engines broke through the oppressive atmosphere. At first, it was barely noticeable, blending into the background of traffic noise. But then it grew louder, unmistakable, the growl of motorcycles approaching. The sound carried a weight, a promise of power and authority that seemed almost cinematic in its effect. The harassers glanced around, puzzled and slightly uneasy. The mother, sensing a potential lifeline, turned her head slightly, her eyes widening as she saw the approaching figures. A group of bikers emerged from the street adjacent to the gas station. There were at least 10 of them, their motorcycles roaring like thunder, engines vibrating through the pavement. Each rider was clad in the typical attire of their brotherhood, leather jackets, heavy boots, and helmets that partially obscured their faces. But it wasn't just their appearance that made them formidable, it was the way they carried themselves, a confident, no-nonsense demeanor that made it clear they did not tolerate injustice. They had noticed the commotion at the gas station as they were passing by and had decided to intervene, guided by a strong sense of community and justice. The bikers positioned themselves strategically, circling the group of harassers. The sudden arrival created an immediate shift in the dynamics of the scene. The aggressors, who had moments before been emboldened by the mother's fear, now hesitated. The motorcycles, engines still rumbling, created a physical and psychological barrier that was impossible to ignore. The biker's presence alone carried an unspoken message: step back, or face the consequences. The mother felt a rush of relief wash over her, but she remained cautious, knowing that the situation was far from resolved. One of the bikers, a tall man with a trimmed beard and an imposing stance, stepped forward slightly, his voice calm but commanding as he addressed the harassers. "Leave her alone," he said simply. The simplicity of the statement, combined with the weight of authority in his tone, had a powerful effect. The men who had been intimidating the mother began to falter, their confidence wavering. The laughter that had previously filled the air died down, replaced by awkward shuffling and nervous glances between them. The bikers continued to advance subtly, not in a threatening manner toward the mother, but enough to assert control over the situation. Their movements were synchronized, almost rehearsed, a display of unity that amplified their intimidating presence. The harassers realized they were outnumbered and outclassed, and the power dynamic shifted dramatically in an instant. The atmosphere changed from one of fear and tension to one of uncertainty and caution for the aggressors. Finally, the harassers began to retreat, muttering under their breath, embarrassed and intimidated by the sudden and overwhelming show of force. They backed away slowly, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity, though it was clear that their bravado had evaporated. The bikers maintained their formation until the men had left the immediate vicinity, ensuring that the mother was safe before relaxing slightly. Once the danger had passed, the bikers removed their helmets, revealing faces lined with experience and kindness rather than menace. The single mother, still shaking but now with tears of relief in her eyes, approached them cautiously. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know what I would have done without you." The bikers nodded, some offering reassuring smiles. One of them placed a hand gently on her shoulder, a gesture of solidarity and protection. They didn't ask for thanks or recognition. Their intervention was instinctive, guided by a code of honor that valued courage and justice above personal gain. Other witnesses, who had watched the entire ordeal unfold, began to murmur among themselves, praising the bikers for their bravery. Some took out their phones to record the scene, while others approached the mother to check if she was okay. The sense of community that had been absent moments earlier returned, bolstered by the bikers' actions. People began to discuss how rare it was to witness such immediate intervention, how often bystanders failed to act in similar situations, and how this display of courage would be remembered long after the sun had set. The mother collected her composure slowly, realizing that she had just experienced a rare act of heroism in an ordinary place. She reflected on the fear and helplessness that had gripped her only minutes earlier and contrasted it with the overwhelming sense of safety and gratitude she now felt. The bikers had not only protected her physically but had also restored her faith in humanity, showing that courage, solidarity, and the willingness to act can overcome intimidation and fear. As the bikers prepared to leave, the mother waved at them, a gesture that conveyed gratitude words could not fully capture. The engines roared to life once again, and they rode away into the fading light, leaving behind a story that would spread quickly through the local community. The incident would be recounted countless times, each retelling emphasizing the bravery of ordinary people willing to do extraordinary things in defense of the vulnerable. In the aftermath, the mother returned to her car, hands still slightly trembling but her heart filled with relief. She looked back at the gas station one last time before driving off, thinking about the unpredictability of life, the sudden shifts from danger to safety, and the unexpected heroes who appeared when they were needed most. She knew that while fear and harassment could appear without warning, so too could courage and solidarity, often from the most unexpected sources. The story of that evening would ripple far beyond the gas station. On social media, videos captured by witnesses quickly went viral, showing the bikers surrounding the aggressors and creating a dramatic tableau of courage. Comments poured in, praising the bikers' bravery and highlighting the importance of standing up for others. Some debated the risks involved, acknowledging that confronting dangerous individuals was never guaranteed to be safe, yet most agreed that their intervention was a beacon of hope in a world that often seemed indifferent to suffering. For the single mother, life eventually returned to its usual rhythm, but the memory of that evening remained vivid. She shared the story with friends, family, and her children, emphasizing the lesson that help can come from unexpected places, and that ordinary people have the power to make a significant difference when they act with courage and conscience. The bikers' actions had transformed what could have been a traumatic experience into a story of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of community. In a world where acts of kindness and bravery are sometimes overshadowed by cruelty and indifference, this incident stood as a reminder that heroism often comes in forms that are visible yet humble. The rumble of engines, the imposing figures clad in leather, and the quiet, decisive action served as a powerful metaphor, that courage, solidarity, and the willingness to act against injustice can make all the difference. It reminded everyone who heard the story that while danger can strike unexpectedly, so too can hope, protection, and the reassurance that humanity has not entirely lost its sense of compassion and justice. Even weeks later, the mother would often think back to that moment, to the sudden roar of the motorcycles, the collective stance of the bikers, and the relief that washed over her when the threat dissipated. She felt a renewed sense of faith, not just in strangers but in the broader idea that people are capable of extraordinary acts when guided by empathy, courage, and the recognition that some situations demand action rather than silence. It was an evening that began like any other but ended with a lesson about the profound impact of intervention, courage, and the silent heroes who ride into the unknown to protect those who cannot protect themselves.